Everybody ready? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the West Fargo City Commission meeting for Monday, May 15th. We are now on the public comment portion of the meeting. Emily, would you please call the name of the individuals that were signed up first, please? If you could. I do not have them.
Okay, it looks like Susan and Heidi were the first two. Okay.
Good evening and welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to say that I normally don't do this type of thing. However, oh, it does? Okay. Okay. However, Bernie, as you know, this has been going on for quite some time. There's a 802 12th Avenue. We have a resident there that has continually, but however, I do have to say that he has started to clean it up some. Continuously to be violating a lot of codes. One of them is having vehicles.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Would you please state your name for the
Oh, I'm
public
sorry.
and your address?
Oh, Susan Zaradka, 839 12.5 Avenue West.
Thank you, Mrs. Zaradka.
So I started asking about this in March of 2020 due to junk, garbage, stuff like that tucked under their steps and all this. And not only that, I mean, there was a bunch of debris in the yard or the boulevard. Like I said, they have cleaned up some of them. However, I guess I'm here just to reiterate that as a resident of West Fargo, I pay taxes. I know they do too. However, there are some codes that are being violated. And one of them is, what is junk? Junk consists of parts of machinery or motors, vehicles, used furniture, appliances, remnants of wood, metal, or any other cast-off material of any kind, whether or not the material can or could be used reasonably. Junk may not accumulate or be stored outdoors on property. So what is junk of an automobile? A vehicle should not be licensed for less than 60 days. And I guess I'm just here to approach this as a concerned citizen. We're doing all this renovation downtown, we're doing all these renovations, but our neighborhoods suffer. And what happens is if one person does it, another person does it, and it just becomes a trickle down. And one block to the north of this, got a person there that has a vehicle that's not been licensed for years. And I'm not like a city patrol or anything like that. I just take pride in my neighborhood. And I just wish other people would too. And I guess this, I'll be honest, this, you know what started this? My husband and I had a small business. We help people do things. We have cleaned and, you know, clean apartments, houses, or whatever. And I had a friend of mine coming over looking for my house. She stopped in front of that house and said, called me and said, Susie, I'm lost. I don't think you live in this neighborhood because it looks like a ghetto. Do you know how embarrassing that was for me? So that's why I'm here. My 2 minutes up?
Thank you, Mrs. Zaradka.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate you coming in.
Okay.
Good evening. Please state your name and address.
Heidi Tong, 833 12th Avenue West.
Welcome.
Thank you. Today we'd like to address a nuisance neighbor at 837 12th Avenue West in West Fargo that is using several toilets as decor in their front yard. These are not new toilets placed on the lawn as lawn ornaments or planters. They are old, used toilets, which is concerning. We have contacted the West Fargo community officer and reported this, along with several other neighbors, and nothing has been done. In fact, during cleanup week, a fourth toilet was taken off one of our neighbors' burbs from down the street and placed in the yard right along the sidewalk. We have been told that if she uses them as planters, they are not considered junk or building materials. However, in the city ordinance, chapter 15:3 indicates what junk is. And truly, if you read that definition, it is considered junk. This is considered junk to several neighbors directly surrounding the toilets. All the neighbors talk, right, in the neighborhood. It's an eyesore and a complete embarrassment for anyone walking or driving down the neighborhood streets, not to mention the devastating impact to our property value if we ever try to sell. Who would want to purchase a house next to or across from the display of 4 disgusting toilets? It's a shame that with all the calls and letters to the city, police, and mayor, none of this has been addressed, similar to the property down at 802 with Sue. Our call to action for those around the residents is to have the toilets removed immediately and add to the city ordinance that no toilets or other absurd objects can be placed in the lawn. We are highly ranked professionals in our community. Sue, myself, my husband, the neighbors that surround this property. And we are all disgusted with this. In addition, we really need to make sure people are held accountable in our city to keep a nice neighborhood.
Thank you, Heidi.
You're welcome. I do have pictures for you if you would like.
That'd be great.
Last picture is we're asking for the bare minimum. All we're asking for.
Where the- Emily, do you have the name of the third person that signed up?
Yes, David Whitty.
David Whitty? I hope I said that correctly. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. My name is David Withy, 2421 McLeod Drive East. We moved to North Dakota in June to be near our daughter, who is a teacher in Cooperstown and lives in Annetta. We very much enjoy living in West Fargo. I am a retired business manager and executive. This is my perspective as I observe organizations. When numerous managers leave an organization in a short period of time, including some who have not been employed for long, it is typically a sign there's a problem with management. Bullying isn't welcome in our schools and is not welcome in the workplace. Hopefully, this is behind us. Unfortunately, there are signs of many potential challenges still to be addressed, in addition to the problem with water billing, issues with transparency, accountability, and professionalism, management problems, not problems with software, other tools, or even employees, management problems. As the saying goes, though, the step to recovery is admitting you have a problem, first step. Hopefully, that has happened. Instituting annual performance reviews for employees is a good step. So is this citizen comment opportunity. So is adding formal policies and procedures where none exist. As our elected representatives, we hope commissioners will be more diligent in ensuring citizens get the city administration we deserve, as do our city employees. This is why you're elected. This we have a right to expect. A group of citizens called West Fargo TAP, including myself, stand ready to help you. When in business, I wanted customer feedback so I could improve our products and services and fix any problems. Please understand, our goal is to help identify potential issues and to work with you to identify potential solutions. With you, not against. Transparency, accountability, and professionalism. That's all we're asking for. Thank you for your service, and thank you for this opportunity to address you.
Thank you, sir. Being this whole process is new, the process is that we pre-sign up prior to the actual meeting. I'm going to go a little bit out of order here. Is there anyone else that did not sign up that would like to address us? This is the first meeting that we're doing this, so we're going to be a little more stringent with the rules moving forward. But at this point in time, I think we need a little flexibility. The lady in the back that raised her hand, if you'd come to the podium, please, and state your name and your address.
I'm Amanda Fox, 837 12th Avenue West in West Fargo.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's my first meeting. So I have come because my neighbors don't like the planters and apparently tree stumps and other things, and I just wanted to come and speak on behalf of those of us that have, you know, creative liberty to do what we want in our own lawns. I also brought some photos of different things. It's not, you know, I'm not just the only individual that might choose to upcycle something. In fact, on the way here, I saw somebody had a mailbox made out of old bowling balls. I thought it was very cute. And I just wanted to state that they are not junk. They are upcycled. They're saving things from the landfill. I also wanted to point out a bigger issue to me. I think our priorities are kind of messed up here. There's been quite a few calls and an uproar about the aesthetics of planters, but yet when the community officers come out and say, you know, all your grass, your neighbors don't like your grass or your planters or any number of other things, I bring up a serious issue to me that never gets addressed. My second grade son, he's 8 years old at Westside in special education. He is autistic, he's very impulsive, and I brought up the fact that the next door neighbors have a pool that is over 4 feet high and their fence surrounding it is only 3 feet high in some spots. And so I ask, this is a clear violation of the code that you all wrote in the interest of safety of children. And I've been told on 3 occasions, oh, well, we don't enforce that one because it's worded weird. Or the last 2 times it's been, oh, we'll look into that and get back to you. And nothing's done. And that's an ordinance that could prevent a tragedy. And we're here to discuss planters today. So that's all I had to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Again, our public comment period is going to be 30 minutes, and we have some time remaining. Is there anyone else? And again, just so everybody understands, we're gonna follow the rules of asking you to pre-register in the future, but today we're going to bend that a little bit. So if there's anyone else that would like to address sir, please come forward. Again, I'd ask you to state your name clearly and your address.
My name is Brian. My brother, Amanda Fox there. I don't know, am I allowed to speak if I'm not a resident of West Fargo? That's the first question.
No, sir, you're not.
No, okay. So
That's one of the rules.
I'll just end that one, I suppose.
Very good, thank you.
May I tell you one thing before I go? Outside of record or anything like that? The officers have told me and my sister that the block that these people live on, they're all arguing about the same thing. The stumps on one corner, my sister in the middle with her toilet, is the most called on neighborhood in the city. Like, could you imagine that that's our biggest problem, is that there's a toilet sitting in the front yard? This lady's called the cops on my sister like 19 times. And it's just nothing. It's always nothing. It's a big hassle. I just want you to take that into consideration when you see that it's almost bordering on harassment. She calls officers directly. They show up without record at the city. You know, it's just something to be aware of.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else that would like to speak?
Can we do a rebuttal or no?
Anyone else? Well, we can choose how we're going to use the rest of the time. Either I'll gavel us out of the public record portion of it, or,
I would recommend, Mayor, that we take about a 15-minute recess.
okay. I want to just acknowledge somebody that's in the room. Representative Jim Jonas, since he's returned from Bismarck, has been attending city meetings everywhere. He also serves us with distinction on the school board. And thank you for your service, Representative Jonas.
Thank you.
It was an interesting session. Let's leave it at that. And Representative Jonas's first one, so I'm sure it was memorable to him. So we're going to gavel out, and the public comment portion is closed. Officers, if you'd like to visit with any of these individuals, that's to your prerogative. I know that you've been on site and you have visited with these people. So I want to thank the public for this first opportunity that we do the public comment. We'll continue to do this. If we feel that it's not enough time, then we'll work on that. If we feel that there's not enough people that come forward for public comment, then we'll deal with that maybe we do this once a month or whatever. But for the time being, we're going to do this at every meeting for at least the next 3 months, and we'll find our way as we continue to get community input as how this works. And the reason that the commissioners are not responding to the discussion that you're having with us is because we're all taking notes up here. If we want to find out something specifically about North Dakota Century Code or city ordinances or whatever, it gives us the opportunity that we speak with accuracy and authority as to what the case might be. So that's the reason that commissioners are not going to engage in this conversation at this meeting. And we'll address them either privately or publicly with you at a later date. Any questions? Again, we thank you for your interest. We thank you for coming forward and talking about our city. We stand adjourned until 5:30 to begin the regular commission meeting. Thank you.
have you come up and introduce.
As you can see by the number of people that we have this evening, we have a great event this evening that we're going to be swearing in 2 new police officers. So with that being said, I'm going to turn this over at this time to Chief Ordinance and his honor guard, as well as his officers that are here. And Chief?
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis. If you'd all stand for the posting of the colors. Honor guard, post colors.
Chief, I'd ask your 2 new people that we're swearing in this evening to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Gentlemen?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
At this time, Chief?
Thank you. Commission President Dardis and members of the commission, it's a pleasure again to be before you tonight, swearing in 2 more police officers with the West Fargo Police Department. One of the officers, obviously they'll both be up here to introduce themselves shortly, but one is a graduate last year of our first annual Peace Officer Training Program that we did in conjunction with Lake Region State College, so very proud of that. And a couple other things to just note for you, I guess, before we get started with their introduction. So you may be aware that yesterday began National Police Week, and today is National Peace Officers Memorial Day. And this year in Washington, D.C. at the Peace Officer Memorial, 224 names of police officers that died in the line of duty last year will be added to the wall this week. So, and then another thing to note is our second annual, I guess if you will, Peace Officer Training Program with Lake Region State College starts here tomorrow. So we're excited to kick that program off again. And as you're aware, because I've been in front of you, I think a couple different times, we've got 3 of our community service officers that will be partaking in that Peace Officer Training Program. So we're excited about that. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to Officer Jeff Boyer. Come on up, Jeff. A couple things about Jeff before he gets to introduce himself to you is he's a graduate of NDSU with his degree in criminal justice and from Alexandria Technical College's Law Enforcement Skills Program. He enlisted in the Guard where he has served for 4 years. Prior to being hired by the West Fargo Police Department as a patrol officer, he was a police officer with NDSU Police Department for 1.5 years. And with that, I will let Officer Boyer finish up the introduction.
Hello, members of the board. Nice to meet you. As Chief said, Jeffrey Boyer. I grew up in the suburbs of Minneapolis, moved to Western North Dakota, middle of my high school career, and then went to NDSU. And there I started to grow fond of the area, West Fargo in particular. It has the big town growing, and yet feels like a small town. So I knew it was something that I wanted to be part of, and I've heard only great things from this department. And since working here, that's what it's been. So I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to call this my professional home, and I look forward to a great career here.
Thank you, Officer Boyer.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Bring up whoever's gonna pin you. Congratulations.
Thanks, Chief.
You bet.
Thank you.
Officer Borg. Officer Parker Borg is a graduate of Bemidji State College in Bemidji, Minnesota, with a degree in criminal justice. And like I alluded to earlier, a graduate from our inaugural Lake Region State College program here in West Fargo in August of '22. Prior to being hired by West Fargo PD, as a patrol officer, he worked on a local farm. And when he's not working, he enjoys hunting, snowboarding, and golfing. So he was a good fit for West Fargo PD. He's not married currently and doesn't have any kids. So, and with that, I'll let him finish the introduction.
Hello, members of the board. Like Chief said, I'm Parker Borg. I grew up right here in West Fargo, and the reason I wanted to work here is really just that. This is where I grew up, and it's the community that I care about. I've wanted to work at West Fargo ever since I've wanted to be a cop, and I feel very lucky to have the opportunity to work for this city.
Welcome.
This badge was forged by the honor and dedication of the officers who served before you. Your duty. Leave it stronger than you received it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Make it official and get them sworn in. There it is. All right, gentlemen, if you'll both raise your right hand for me. I state your name,
I, Jeffrey Boyer,
having been duly appointed a police officer
have been duly appointed a police officer
for the city of West Fargo,
for the city of West Fargo.
do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and that of North Dakota.
and that of North Dakota.
I will faithfully and impartially,
I will faithfully and impartially,
to the best of my knowledge
to the best of my knowledge
and abilities,
and abilities,
perform the duties
perform the duties
of said office
of said office
according to law.
according to law.
I will constantly strive
I will constantly strive
to achieve the objectives
to achieve the objectives
and ideals as stated,
and ideals as stated,
dedicating myself
dedicating myself
to my chosen profession,
to my chosen profession,
law enforcement.
law enforcement.
So help me God.
So help me God.
All right, congratulations.
Addie, you tell us whether or not we've got to come down for a picture. Is this, all right, thank you. First of all, from a grateful community, thank you for sharing your two great young men with us. I promise that the command staff that's standing in the back of the room, the officers that we have working here at West Fargo, will do everything they can to properly train these individuals, assist these individuals, and make sure that they come home safe to you all every night. That's what's important. So again, on behalf of a grateful community to the loved ones, thank you. We know that it's not difficult, it's a difficult time for some police officers to be on the street. But with good training, great support that we have there, and a city commission that understands the value of public safety in our communities, we'll take good care of them. So congratulations to you both.
So for anybody that's not here for the regular commission meeting, if you're here for the swearing in, we'll go out the back and we've got a little program.
The next order of business on the agenda is the approval of the agenda as presented to you.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson, second. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item D is the approval of the minutes of May 1st, 2023. They are on pages 3 through 7 in the packet, and they have been distributed.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson, seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of May 1st, 2023, as presented on pages 3 through 7 in the packet. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item E is the building permits report. It has been distributed. It is on pages 8 through 10. It is in your packet.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner. George, is there a second, please?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Anderson. Been moved and seconded to approve the building permits as distributed, pages 8 through 10 in the packet. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is a consent agenda. It is items A through E, pages 11 through 72.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George, seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda, items A through E, pages 11 through 72. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to the regular agenda. As you can see, item number 1 has been done. It is the swearing in of the officers that we moved to the beginning of the meeting. So moving on to regular agenda, item number 2 is the first reading of an ordinance number 1224 through 1231, code amendments. Mr. Mark Hausch, Inspection Administrator for the City of West Fargo, is on pages 73 through 142 of the packet. Good evening, Mr. Hausch. Welcome.
Good evening. The ordinance is here to update the building codes and fire codes and various codes through the ICC code cycles. It happens every 3 years. Things get changed, improved, and so we're here to look at adopting the 2021 code cycles. That's the International Building Code, the International Energy Conservation Code, the International Fire Code, the International Mechanical Code, the International Fuel Gas Code, the International Property Maintenance Code, the International Residential Code, and the International Existing Building Code. The idea is to adopt each code, and with each one of them comes a set of amendments. And the amendments are done to keep the codes more in sync for our jurisdiction and more in line with surrounding jurisdictions and, of course, the state, just so it makes it easier for the contractors and persons wanting to work with these codes to be on an even playing field across the country or across the state. So if there's any questions, I don't know if any of you have ever read any of these or understand them, but I'll entertain any questions.
Questions for Mr. Hausch? Commissioner George?
Is there any drastic changes that are worth pointing out throughout this?
Luckily enough, not with this code cycle. Pretty much everything stayed the same. The biggest things, like when we do these, like the flood codes and stuff like that, all the provisions in the building code are taken out because we have our own ordinance driving for the flood stuff. I think one of the major discussions we had at the state level was unvented heaters in houses. The state code went with allowing them, but we maintain to not allow them because there's still some factors with those that create a hazard inside the home. When you're dumping carbon monoxide directly into the home, it's not a real good thing. But in time, the products will get better, and we'll be allowing them sometime in the future. But other than that, there was really no big discussions or anything like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Hausch. Additional questions, commissioners?
I just have one,
Commissioner Simmons.
if I could. Mark, thanks for bringing this forward. This is maybe off the wall, but I actually have a question for Casey. Have you gone through this to see if this is going to be detrimental at all to our daycare program that we're providing? I mean, there's a lot of, I'm not sure how much has changed, Mark, actually in it, but when you mention we're perhaps a little stronger than the state in some areas, would that be detrimental to what we're trying to do, Casey?
I haven't gone through it, but I can touch base with Mark after this.
Okay.
Very good.
Just to make sure that we're doing this program, we sure don't want to
It's a great question.
fall back, so.
Any additional questions for Mr. Hausch?
I move we approve first reading.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the first reading of ordinance number 1224 through 1231, code amendments, as presented by Mr. Hausch. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hausch.
Thank you.
Item number 3 is Economic Development Advisory Committee volunteer. The action that they're looking for this evening is to approve the Economic Development Advisory Committee's nominee for a member-at-large position. It's on page 143 of the packet. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Commissioner President Dardis, Commissioners. I'm requesting today an approval of the application for Karen from Marvin to the Economic Development Advisory Committee. The committee has reviewed her experiences and unanimously voted to recommend her to the City Commission. Most noteworthy, I would say, the experience that she brings to the table as the community relations manager at Marvin is that they manage multiple facilities in multiple states, and so they have some unique challenges and perspectives that they can share with us as we move forward with projects and plans. I'll stand for any questions.
Questions? Commissioners? Okay.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the Economic Development Advisory Committee's nominee, Karen Rouse, from Marvin's for the members at large. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4 is the second reading and the final approval of a zoning ordinance amendment to Title IV of the city ordinances pertaining to site plan review. We welcome Lisa Sankey, planner for the city of West Fargo. It's on pages 144 through 154 of the packet. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and City Commissioners. Nothing's changed since the public hearing and first reading 2 weeks ago. The purpose of the proposed amendments is to modify and clarify zoning regulations relating to site and building plan review within the corridor overlay and interstate corridor overlay districts and general clerical corrections. It's recommended that the city approve the second reading of the zoning ordinance amendments. I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sankey. Commissioners, questions for the lady?
Move to approve second reading.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the second reading and the final approval of zoning ordinance amendments to Title IV of the city ordinances pertaining to site plan review. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 5 is a Public Works asphalt overlay, various locations, being presented this evening by Matt Andrick, Director of Public Works for the City of West Fargo. The purpose of this discussion is to create a project number 2277 and improve an engineer's report and direct an engineer to prepare plans and specifications. It is on pages 155 to 161 in the packet. Good evening, Mr. Andrick, and welcome.
Good evening, Commissioner President and Commissioners. Tonight, like the Commissioner President said, we're in front of you to create Project 2277, approve engineer's report, and direct the engineer to prepare plans and specifications. This project is kind of a piggyback on what we started last year, is doing some of these mill and overlays in-house with Public Works crews. We identified 5 different locations around the city to go in there and mill and overlay. Some of them Center Street from 7th Avenue Northeast to 12th Avenue Northeast, as if anybody's been on that road is well aware that is in dire need of repair, as is 13th Avenue westbound from Perry Parkway to Cheyenne Street. 9th Street Northwest is a continuation of what we did last year. We're just going on the north side of that railroad bridge and then going about 1,500 feet to where the concrete matches up there. We have a couple other smaller streets that we're finishing the neighborhood just north of Main Avenue there. This is one of those projects when we can do it in-house, work with engineering just to be able to save costs. And a lot of this is to almost put a Band-Aid on it to just get it down the road so we can apply for federal or state dollars to do a larger full rehab of these areas. If we were to just go in it right now and have to pay for it, you know, fully out of pocket for the city, it'd be quite a bit. This way we can have a smaller amount Band-Aided until we can try and get more funding to pay for this project, so we're not fully funding it as well. The estimated cost of this is about $510,000. To pay for this would be come out of our CIP funds. We did have a CIP project for the paving that was included in the 2022 CIP that was approved. And then also there was a 2023 chip seal project that was approved that we're not able to do this year, that we're going to use those funds to cover these asphalt overlays. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions of Mr. Andrick?
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson moved. Commissioner George seconds. Is there any discussion? Mr. Scott, I have a question for you. Unused $330,000 of a 2023 CIP project for chip seals. Is this a normal procedure where we can redirect those funds to a different project? Is there any other process that needs to take place? or any other reviews that need to take place to do this?
Thank you, Commission President Dardis, members of the commission. Yes, so there's a fund balance for the capital improvement projects, primarily funded with capital improvement sales tax. When the commission approved the CIP back in 2022, that set the priority and the funding sources for a number of projects. The ideal process is to go through that CIP annually. Unfortunately, this year we're a bit delayed just due to circumstances these past couple months, but we hope to schedule a CIP workshop to bring forward the current list of projects, the current list of funding sources, dollar amounts, so on and so forth, in which case then we can reset priorities and reallocate funds accordingly. So, but in terms of being able to use capital improvement sales tax to fund capital improvement projects, yes, this is certainly within the realm of your authority to do so.
Okay. So the unused $330,000 from the chip sealing, was that shared publicly as to which streets that work was going to be done? Do we need to re-communicate with those neighborhoods about that process is not going to take place?
Well, the capital improvement plan in 2022 merely had a placeholder for pavement management chip seal. Oftentimes, depending on how the winter cycle goes, we have to be a bit flexible, dynamic, go hit target areas. So no, in that case, there were no specific streets or neighborhoods identified. It was just merely setting aside $330,000 for a pavement management chip seal project.
Thank you for that clarification. We have a motion, a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Anbick. Item number 6 is a memorandum of understanding between the City of West Fargo and West Fargo Parks. Again, Mr. Matt Anbick will be presenting. In the order of discussion here is to approve the memorandum of understanding for Charleswood Community Orchard, pages 162 to 166. Mr. Anbick.
Thank you, Commissioner President, Commissioners. Our Forest Department has, had a number of orchards. I think we believe we have 8. This would be number 9 that we've done in the city for the community orchards. I know they are looking at different areas. We had some residents from the Charleswood area had reached out to us and were interested in bringing an orchard into this area. When our Forestry Department was doing some checking out of discussions with the Parks Department, they settled on an area there that is the 1500 block of 7th Street East. It's in the kind of the backyards where the bike path goes through there. As part of this process, we did send letters out to all the neighbors that would be affected by this or bordered this property and kind of gave a waiting period. We did have one person respond, and they just wanted to know if they were going to be special assessed for that. The answer was no, this is within our budget. We budgeted for this, and they said that was great, and you'd like to volunteer if there's anything I could do. So we've always had really good feedback. It's always been a positive experience from the neighborhoods when we've done these orchards. So I guess for this would be 17 trees, and the cost would be less than $1,000 to do that. Plus, that is in our 2023 forestry budget for this. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Anbick. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner George.
Just a quick one. First of all, I think this is fantastic. Is this on our website as far as where the community orchards are located?
I
can answer that.
It is.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, if you go to government drop-down on the website and go to forestry, on the left-hand side, there's a spot that says community orchards, and it has a list of all the locations by address of where all the orchards are that we have.
Awesome. Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson is on the Urban Forestry Committee. Oh, be on top of it. Good job. Anything else for Mr. Anbick? Commissioners?
I'll move to approve.
Commissioner Anderson moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the MOU for Charleswood Community Orchard on pages 162 to 166 in the packet. Is there any further discussion? And you'll note that there's apple trees, plum trees. There's a nice variety of trees that are going to be planted. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Anvik. Item number 7 on the agenda is the consideration of a draft purchasing policy being brought forth by Dustin Scott, Assistant City Administrator. It is on pages 167 to 181 in the packet. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Commission President Dardis, members of the commission. Before you is a draft of the purchasing policy. John and I have been working with Commission President Dardis over the past month to finalize the draft of this policy. It has been kind of back and forth over the past year to 2 years here. So excited to bring it forward and have some good dialogue on it. The policy does have a table, so just to refer you to page 4, where there is a table. This outlines the thresholds that are established, as well as the purchasing types and the competition that would be required under each of these categories. For example, whether or not we would solicit quotes versus go out for a full competitive bid process. So it is the again, a more of a user-friendly guide for all of the language that is within the policy document itself. Again, been working with our City Attorney, John Shockley, and Commission President Dardis, so feel free to ask me or one of them any questions.
Commissioners? Commissioner Olson.
Just some comments, and I don't know, this is just for discussion at this point, right? Some of the stuff here that at the tail end of that chart, where we've already approved an item in the annual budget, and then we have to bring it forth again when we're ready to actually purchase it, could put us in a bind if we can get a deal on it today, or we have to wait 2 weeks for us to meet again to actually approve it. So we could actually cost the citizens more money by having to wait 2 weeks, even though we've already approved item A for Department 1, and we've already got it in the budget for X number of dollars, and if we can save, 10% or 20% today by buying it, but we have to wait 2 weeks, or however long it takes to meet for the next meeting, we could then end up costing the taxpayers more money by having to wait and follow this chart. So I would like to see that massaged or changed a little bit, because if we have to, act on the spur of the moment to save $1 or $2, I think we should have that flexibility other than have to bring it back. Because we've already approved it in the budget, why does it have to come back through here again?
Commissioner Simmons.
I have one question on that. In reference to what Commissioner Olson just said, none of this pertains to the CIP, though, correct? Because those are supposed to always come back regardless. If we approve a budget, and we kind of get confused of, are we approving a budget, and then is the CIP automatically approved? Or, because I always hear you say, well, we'll come back for the CIP, before we do it. But yet, in essence, we're approving that with the budget, are we not?
This is all just contracts. I think that's an important thing to remember.
Well, it says purchases, so like if, for example, if we want to purchase a load of asphalt for our paving project and the price dropped today, but we got to wait 2 weeks, let's say it drops tomorrow, and we could save 10% or 20%, but we got to wait until the next meeting to bless it again, even though we've just approved the project. Now we just cost our citizens more money.
Mr. Scott, you were ready to respond.
I'll try my best. Absolutely a good dialogue to have, and some of these things we can certainly take forward and work on, bring this back. But to start with, Commissioner Simmons, your question in terms of construction projects, if you look at the table, the first 2 categories here are new construction contracts and change orders to construction contracts. For the most part, those are policies that we've already been following. You're absolutely correct. Every CIP project comes before the city commission, generally multiple times for various stages of approvals. But this just establishes the thresholds by which either the department or administrator or city commission can also authorize contracts, as well as identify the competition methods. For example, once you get to a construction contract that's going to be over $200,000, we follow the North Dakota Century Code in advertising those bids and going through that process. Actually, the change orders to the construction contracts was a direction set forth by the commission 5 to 10 years ago, in which they established a threshold by which change orders that are in excess of $100,000 need to come before the city commission. Moving down the table, there are professional contracts. There are amendments to those professional contracts. There are new purchases and/or contracts that were included in the budget. And then, of course, amendments to those purchases and/or contracts. One thing that I didn't say when I started, this is fairly common among cities. This is fairly similar to Fargo's policy. It's maybe a little bit of a different format, if you will, but the general principle is the same in that it establishes these thresholds, the competitive nature in which we will acquire those services and/or purchase those goods. But yes, there are some nuances. Being we haven't had, a very detailed policy like this, I don't know how the language in here would affect our ability to, say, negotiate a deal on a used truck. If that came on the market, we got wind of it, and it's 50% off because the city of pick one is getting rid of it. Do we have to wait 2 weeks to come back before the commission to get approval? And then in that time, did we lose the ability to negotiate a deal? There are going to be some of those nuances. I don't know. I suppose, if anything, my first response would be to reach out to other communities and see how they deal with that, and then report back. We do have a section in here, section 4.02, that deals with emergency situations. But negotiating a deal or trying to close on a deal is not necessarily an emergency. So I'd have to look into that a little further, unless John or Matt would want to comment on something else.
So to follow on what you just said, let's say we did approve for a new dump truck for, I'll just pick a number, over one of these thresholds, but you can get a deal on it 50% off today only, and we have to wait 10 plus days, business days or more, to act on it, and otherwise that deal is gone. Somebody else could, swoop in and get it, and now we've lost the opportunity. So I don't want to hog tie our ability to do that by putting in and all of our people who are out there making these purchases are looking out for the community first, because they're trying to save the dollars for us. I've seen it firsthand.
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. I guess, Dustin, I don't want to put you in this position to answer this question, but perhaps we could ask John what your opinion or your advice would be on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. The emergency clause would not apply to the purchase of a truck for a discount. The Century Code specifically defines emergencies to be like a house is burning down, or the tank farm is on fire, and the fire department needs to go purchase $300,000 of specialized foam or something. That's an emergency, or there's a flood situation going on. So the emergency clause wouldn't kick in. You do have the ability to authorize staff if somebody needs to buy a dump truck, you authorize, $300,000 for a dump truck, and it comes in at $150,000. You've already given them the authority to make the purchase for $300,000. It just can't exceed $300,000. I'm sure there's all sorts of scenarios that a good deal may come up from here. That would be the only issue that we'd have, is if there's suddenly a good deal comes up, and I'm not sure that our policy can address every single nuance like that. That'd be very difficult.
Thank you. I think Mr. Randwick had something that he would like to share with us.
Just kind of in response to that, Commissioner Olson, when we are purchasing stuff like that, we still have to either get 3 quotes, 2 quotes, to make sure we have enough of those, and especially a lot of those deals we get are on state bid lists that we're going. I believe Dustin added language in there, and John had added language in there to cover those state bid lists. So we'd still, under this, how they have it listed now, we'd still be able to do that. I know after a certain dollar figure, we probably have to send it up for RFP, so that will kind of lose our ability to get some of those deals if one pops up, if we have to do that and stick by it. But to follow this, a lot of it is just a little more guidelines that we have to do, but it's still doable under the form that they have.
Anyone else? Questions for Dustin or Matt or Mr. Shockley? All have addressed this issue.
Is this an actionable item tonight, Mayor?
Yes, it is. Part of the reason that it is an actionable item is that we have to have this policy in agreement for the North Dakota Department of Transportation as far as our purchasing policies and how we administer contracts, because sometimes we're using some of their money. So this is an actionable item. Mr. Scott?
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis, and you're absolutely right, and I failed to mention that too, is that the state and federal requirements, we are needing to get the DOT something so that we can satisfy those requirements. I can certainly, if the commission is wanting to give us some direction and make some changes, I can certainly reach out to the DOT and ask for an extension.
We're on an extension now as we speak.
Yep, we currently are on an extension. I don't foresee that they would be too tough on us if we ask for another month. Certainly we've had some good discussion tonight. We can certainly get back and make some changes. I would just ask, specifically for some direction on which changes to make. We can also, again, I'll pause there and see where you want to go with that.
Commissioner George.
Okay, I guess it's just a comment really more than anything. So, I mean, I can see what Commissioner Olson is saying, but I think the problem with that is then you run into public transparency issues. Is some of these larger purchase items, even though, yes, you may lose out on getting the better deal, I don't think you can start doing that, because then the public isn't seeing it go through the commission, which is where the public transparency piece comes in. So I think the question we as a commission really need to ask ourselves, to me, with this is just, are we okay with these thresholds? This is basically how we've been operating. Are we okay with this? Or do we want those thresholds changed? That's how I see this. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. I agree completely with Commissioner George on that statement. Some of the thresholds have been modified. And they've been modified that more authority goes to either the city administrator or the commission. If you'll notice, in the last 4 to 5 years, if there's tax dollars being spent, it's not on the consent agenda. It's on the regular agenda. And the only way it goes to the consent agenda is after the commission has already acted on it. That's a policy change that took place, again, 5 years ago. So if there's dollars being spent, it has to come through the regular agenda. And that's the authority that I have. So there's no longer consent agenda items for items that I want all the commissioners to review them. Some of the thresholds have been lowered, and some of them have been changed to the whoever the city administrator is, changing it from a department head. Again, that's for transparency issues, just like Commissioner George just highlighted. So with that, is there any additional questions? Are you ready to act on this item?
Well, we can always, if we run into problems where we are all of a sudden spending more money than we had budgeted because we have to wait, we can always come back and tweak it if we need be.
I think the best example that we have was some of the things that during COVID that Mr. Andvik had to deal with availability of some of the products, where during the searches we were finding vehicles that were in the next year, but we couldn't find the ones we wanted for this year. And by buying them, there were some great dollars saved. I think that, if I recall, there was about 3 or 4 items that took place, and it was a substantial, I want to say, I know it was over $25,000. I think it was more than that. And that was, again, a credit to the purchasing policy that we had in place. But for transparency purposes, Mr. Andvik brought it forward the city saved money, and we fulfilled a need, so. Anyone else? What's your pleasure, Commissioners?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the draft purchasing policy as presented, pages 167 to 181 in the packet. With a notation to the comment of Commissioner Olson that if we feel that we need to, if we find that this is burdensome or whatever, it can be reconsidered. Being that discussion was part of the motion. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 8 is a citywide center line striping project. Mr. Dan Hansen, city engineer, create a project number 2278, approve an engineer's report, and award a project to contractor. It's on pages 182 to 189 in the packet. Good evening, Mr. Hansen. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. This is something that we do every other year where we've got our roadways striped. Obviously, with the deterioration of the paint, we have to go back, refresh that, and there's striping that happens. With it happening every other year, it's typically a capital improvement project because it's not something that would be an annual same amount every year budget. So that's why we bring this part forward. There still is some dollars in Public Works budget that's more used for crosswalks and things like that. So what we're talking about tonight is basically our center line stripes and our parking lanes to get those restriped. We did solicit quotes from a number of different companies that do this work. The lowest responsible bid that we got back was from North Star Safety, and we would be looking to award this project to that contractor. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. Questions, Commissioner? Okay.
I'll make motion to approve project 2278.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve project number 2278, a citywide center line striping project as presented by Mr. Hansen. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 9 is project number 9034, Core Area Capital Improvement Planning. Mr. Dan Hansen, again, from the city engineer, will be presenting, and the order of the discussion is to approve the task order number 67. It's on pages 190 to 205 in the packet. Mr. Hansen.
Thank you again, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. In your packet is a task order for a consultant to basically take the core area study that was completed in 2019 and do a number of things to it. One would be to update the numbers, the dollar amounts that are in that study. If that study was originally started in 2018, 5 years ago. Since then, we've had the pandemic, we've had a lot of inflation, we've had a lot of different things that have contributed to the costs of construction going up considerably during that time. The core area study is a planning document that we use for our CIP and for our planning efforts. And a couple of the things that were missing from that original core area study was the Meadow Ridge neighborhood. That was left out of the core area study at the time. We would be looking to basically take the work, have the consultant add that development into this new study that we would be doing when we update it. The other thing is that the core area study did a great job of listing a lot of projects and a lot of needs that we have within the city, and it listed a number of studies that need to happen. Included in the packet is some basically some water main, some sanitary, some storm sewer mapping that was done at the time, as well as roadways. But also I showed in there as a result of one of the tables from that original core area, and I highlighted, as you can see, there's multiple studies that were called out being needed yet from that core area study. Now, we're not specifically tackling the Cheyenne Street storm lift station study, for example, with what we're doing here. But what we would be doing is taking a look at a lot of the projects that they determined that there was need for, and putting basically a triage of how the order that we would want to do this, because the core area study was more in the line of this is the worst deteriorated system, it's the biggest need, so that should be project number one. Project number two would be the second worst one, but there is a little bit of a semblance that's needed to be done as far as what would be a smart order in which to tackle these projects. For example, if we were taking a look at 7th Avenue, for example, if we were to just redo a portion of 7th Avenue, there's a lot of the core area that actually is going to be flowing through those pipes. What size should those pipes be? So there's going to be a trunk study done, incorporated into this, so that way when we do reconstruct some areas or do some rehab on some areas, we're not putting money towards replacing something that is going to be undersized in the future. We'll want to make sure that when we replace something that we put some thought process into what's going to be happening in the future, so that way in the future, when we do find out that that 24-inch pipe that we would just put back in should have been a 36 or a 42-inch pipe, we'll have put it in as a 36 or a 42-inch pipe. So there's going to be some trunk storm sewer, water main, and storm sewer needs that will be considered with this. And then there'll be some meetings with the staff and our consultant once we have identified those projects, and then after those projects have been identified in order, then the consultant has costs included in this study, in this task order, to actually go back in and put pen to paper and get more realistic cost estimates on the next 8 projects. The number 8 was picked because that would be generally about a 5-year CIP. If we were going to be aggressive in the core area to do some reconstructs, that would generally be a lot of work to take on. It could stretch out, if we don't do them as fast as possible, out to possibly 10 years, but the thing is to be able to come back and have the updated dollars in there so that we know exactly, to the best of our knowledge and estimate, what we can expect for those dollars to be. So it's putting things in order, verifying things, and they're going to use a lot of the information that we paid for in that core area study to be able to do this. AE2S was the company that had done the original core area study. They've provided us the algorithms that they used for their prioritization of projects that was able to be provided to our consultants for them to use, and basically plug in some of the new numbers to that. So there's a lot involved with it, but I guess with that, I would just answer any questions that you would have.
Questions for Mr. Hanson? Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Dan. What, the original study we did in 2019, what did that cost us? Do you know the cost on that?
That was before my time, Dustin.
Shooting from the hip, it was around $350,000, Commissioner.
Okay, and out of that $350,000 that we did back then to do a study, what did we accomplish? What projects did we get done to say that we did this street or we did that street with that? Did we do?
So, there was a very, very intensive scope of work. It included things like evaluating all of the infrastructure, which took a lot of man hours, specialized testing, so on and so forth. It developed a criteria method in which to rank and prioritize projects. It certainly could provide the commission that scope of work.
Did we actually do some projects? That's where I'm going. Did we actually physically do shovel projects with that study?
Well, the biggest one being the downtown Cheyenne Street project.
Okay.
Was in the core area. It initially was going to be a 10-year project, but the core area, towards the end of that work, recommended that we do a full reconstruction there.
Do the sewer and water?
With the sewer and water, yep.
Okay.
Yes, and there's been some other work that Public Works has done, but in terms of a full reconstruction, for example, in a neighborhood, we have not done that yet, and one of our biggest challenges, of course, is financing.
I guess the point I want to make, or that, you know, I hate studies. We all know that. Everybody knows I hate these things, but if we do something with it, that's a whole different thing than just coming up and say, let's do a study. I'd like to see these start being attached to some actual shovel-ready projects rather than let's do a study, set it on the shelf for 5 years and come back and let's do another study. So I'd love somehow in the future to change these to actually driven projects where we can show the citizens, this is what we did with this study. I hope you can do that with this study.
With the results of this study, we would have the first 8 lined up, and then it would just be putting it in front of the commission, getting authorization to proceed with it. And as Dustin said, we would definitely want to take a look, and we've been talking about doing a workshop. I have a project in the core area, one of the number one needs that they called out in the core area study, teed up, ready to go with the feasibility study and an engineer's report. At this point, I don't believe if I brought it forward that the amount of specials that
Right.
would take would be approved. So the next step really is talking about financing these projects. But we have been working on projects. I could show you the feasibility report that we had from a consultant on that. And then it's just literally prioritizing it, making sure that when we have it prioritized that we're doing it right, so we don't have to come back, do it again, and then we'll be able to move towards construction pretty quickly as long as we get our financing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, additional questions from Commissioner Olson?
So we picked this whole geographical area because they're pretty dependent upon one another for all the different infrastructures, right? So if you make one change here, you have to know how it affects other parts of that same area, because if we just go in and just decide we're going to pick this neighborhood here, we're going to do that, and not look at anything else outside of that, we could get ourselves into a bind. Is that what you're trying to tell us, Dan?
Yes, that's correct. If we put basically when these projects were originally designed, there's been a whole new level of design criteria, for example, on stormwater and things of that nature, that's happened since they were designed. So we can't just go back and replace with in-kind. Today we have to use current modeling software to size different pipes and different things. That was not done with the current system because it's all 60, 70 years old. So in the new criteria, design criteria, I'm confident that there will need to be pipes that are going to need to be upsized. Right now, we don't know what size that would be. Without doing a study of that nature, then yeah, we could get into trouble by installing brand new undersized piping.
I have to agree with Commissioner Simmons. When I first saw this item on the agenda, I was apprehensive about another study as well. Once you get into the body of it and you get a better understanding of what has to take place, what Commissioner Olson is taking place, I had a change of heart. I will remind everyone that the state dollars that we were getting from the prairie dog funding, and that still has a path forward as far as funding goes. And if Representative Jonas was still here, could probably help me with that. But prior to Representative Jonas being elected, the city of West Fargo was in the top 3 or the top 4 because of our growth pattern as to the money that we'd be receiving from the state. And by per biennium, I believe it was $12.2 or $12.3 billion or million. And a previous commission, before Commissioner George and Commissioner Anderson joined us, we had committed the prairie dog funding for rehabilitation projects specifically. And of course, that has to be purviewed again by this body, but that was one of the things that when we were working with the legislature and working with how that dollars would be spent if they were going to be allocated to the city of West Fargo. That was an important understanding we had with our legislators. Senate Majority Leader Rich Wardner wanted that to know that it goes to infrastructure specifically. And at that time, that's what we talked about. But we would obviously review that now that we have a new commission sitting. But there's some significant dollars that come from the state, and we'd ask that your staff, Dan, and anybody else, that's part of the consideration when we do the financial modeling. Because we have some of those neighborhoods in this core area that if we are going to tear up the street and replace the sewer and replace the water, we all know how significant that will be with regard to a special assessment will be unaffordable. So that being said, like I said, I'm on the same page as Commissioner Simmons with not another study, but after reflecting and reading through all the data, it's a worthy project, and I think we need to do it. Thank you. Commissioner Olson?
Is this, if we approve this, do we know the approximate cost of this additional?
Of the task order?
Yeah.
The task order is in the packet, and it's estimated at $99,000.
98.
I must have missed that. Okay.
98.
Thank you.
I believe it's 98,000.
Is it 98? I'm sorry.
Yep. Commissioners, your pleasure.
I'll move we approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to move forward on Project 9034, Core Area Capital Improvement Planning, as presented by Mr. Hanson. It's on, it's approved task order number 67, and pages 190 to 207 in the packet. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 10 is the traffic signal upgrades citywide. Mr. Dan Hanson, City Engineer. The purpose of the discussion this evening is to approve a purchase of equipment. It's on pages 206 to 207 in your packet.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. The traffic signal system is, I'll just read the information and recommendation. The traffic signal system is aging and needs routine upgrading and maintenance. There's currently 2 types of controllers used across the city, requiring additional maintenance resources for the older versions. What this project does is it'll upgrade all existing older ASCE 3 controllers to the modern Cobalt controllers, improving signal performance and maintenance. Controllers will be purchased from the vendor and installed by Public Works at 13 intersections citywide. So basically in these 13 intersections, we've got some old equipment that's inside of it. Both Moorhead, Fargo, and West Fargo utilizes the new system, and this would get all of the remaining signals this new system. We would be able to save some money by having our Public Works be able to install this. It's more of a plug-and-play type of an operating system that we can use. So we did get a quote for $46,527. That is in the packet to purchase this equipment. We would project that it would be used for the capital improvement sales tax to make this purchase. And this would get all of our signals running on this new on these new controllers.
So is this the only 13 that require an upgrade? Will you be coming back in the near future for additional intersections, or is this it?
This should be it. The newer, all of our newer signals have the new equipment in it. These are some more of our aging signals.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hanson. Commissioners, additional questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Simmons moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the traffic signal upgrades and purchase of equipment of $46,527 as outlined in the packet of pages 206 to 207. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 11 is the application for lead service line inventory assistance, LSLI. Dan Hansen, city engineer, will be presenting, and the item of discussion this evening is to approve the resolution authorize filing of an application to the NDDEQ for assistance performing a lead service line inventory in compliance with the lead and copper rule revisions. Pages 208 to 214 in your packet. Mr. Hansen.
Thank you, Commissioner, President Dardis, and Commissioners. Everything in the news with the lead services and things of that nature, the state of North Dakota DEQ is putting it as a high priority to identify in our city the lead service lines that exist. We believe that we have a pretty decent accounting, Public Works does, of where they are, but by the end of next year, the DEQ is going to be requiring cities to basically submit in their format, here's a list and an inventory, and they're also interested in how many copper services we have, how many poly services, things of that nature as well. So what this does is this is an application for us to request that the DEQ help financially in us putting in, not us, but a consultant putting together that list. Now, we would not be hiring the consultant. The DEQ has put such a priority on this that they have basically offered to assist cities in paying for this inventory. So what we need to do is to approve this, to ask the DEQ if they would support the city in making this inventory, and then the consultant would actually enter into contract with the DEQ to do this. So there would be no cost to the city for this, and it's an opportunity for us to get this inventory list done at no cost to the city through those resources.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. The NDDEQ does stand for the North Dakota Department of Environmental Quality. And so to my understanding is that the survey is going to be up to the curb stop of identifying lead pipes?
They would basically do inventories with the homeowners and things of that nature. The Public Works has established, as they've been replacing meters, they've been noting what type of service lines there are, and we would be providing that information to the consultant, and then they would be going out and filling in the gaps of what we don't know. So they would be working with the public to be able to figure that out. Now, some of it can be as-builts that were what it was installed for, like in the new area of town. We know what was installed there because we have designs and as-builts and things like that. Some of the older areas of towns, we would still need to go and do that. But again, as Public Works has replaced meters, we know a lot of those. It's just basically doing a lot of compiling, a lot of putting it into the format that the DEQ wants to see it in, and then identifying what gaps are there, and then they would fill in those gaps.
I see in the application that prior to 1988, the city had approximately 3,500 number of service connections, and it's estimated now that it's 11,700 service connections in the city of West Fargo. Mm-hmm. So getting help with this survey from the state of North Dakota seems like a very good idea. Any other additional questions for Mr. Hansen? Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. Kind of a red flag goes up in the essence that, so when help me out, when was lead-based lead, like when did they, here's my point, we have a lot of older homes in our community that probably have lead-based in them. Is that safe to say?
Right now, we know of 3.
3?
3 new homes.
So when we changed out our meters, we had some type of records, I imagine, were kept. Mr. Anvik?
Yeah, lead services mostly, for the most part, were basically going all the way by 1960s. A lot of the homes that we have are, late 50s and 60s, which that really started getting into copper. And most of it, Public Works has replaced some in the past, and other homeowners that have. So we do know of only 3 in town right now, currently.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Anvik. Mr. Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President. Just kind of wanted to maybe, go up 30,000 feet. The reason that we're doing this, is the EPA has a new lead pipe rule in place that requires water utilities to replace, I think it's at least 10% of the lead service lines every year as part of the improvement plan. So we're responding to a federal mandate, and the city really isn't in a position not to do anything because you have to comply with the federal rule.
Thank you, Mr. Shockley, for that clarification. It made news last week that the state of Minnesota is considering doing a funding to replace all lead-based pipes in the state of Minnesota. And I know, we all know that Detroit, Michigan, and parts of Michigan have struggled with this for years. Any additional questions for Mr. Hanson? Commissioners?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. We have a motion and a second to approve the application for lead service line inventory assistance with the North Dakota Department of Environmental Quality. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Item number 12 is the second reading of ordinance number 1223, collection of garbage fees. Mr. Shockley, City Attorney, City of West Fargo. It's on page 215 of the packet.
Thank you, Mr. Commission President. This is a very routine item. You'll recall about 2 meetings ago, we had the first reading. There's been no change between the first and second reading due to all the activity we've had in other areas. We didn't get on the agenda the last 2 meetings. It's just changing, setting the rates within the ordinance to setting it by resolution. There'll still be a public resolution setting the rates. It's just when the city commission wants to change rates, it doesn't have to go through a first and a second reading. There's been no changes between the first and second reading of the ordinance, and it's very straightforward. Answer any questions if you want. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Shockley? Again, this second reading is actionable item.
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the second reading of ordinance number 1223 with regarding to the collection of garbage fees. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 13 is a discussion about the utility billing issue, an article that was published on 5/10/2023. Commissioner Anderson, it's on pages 216 of the packet. Please.
All right. So as we know, there's an article published May 10th about the utility billing error issue that we've had. I found a lot of that information interesting, to be honest. I wanted to talk about it. I know it's probably not going to be an easy thing to talk about, but I have some questions for the commission, and then I have questions for staff and perhaps Mr. Shockley if he's able to provide any answers. But I think to an extent, we all kind of knew there was an issue, but I'm curious if anyone knew the extent of the issue, because the article, when it was published, there's a lot of new information to me. So I'm curious if anybody knew a lot of the detail that was out there, how far it spread across different categories or anything. So I guess that's my question to the commission.
What categories do you think?
May I interrupt real quick? I'm sorry, just because I want to make a comment. John, I don't know if there's any lawsuits still pending or not, but I think if there are, or we need to be a little careful with what, I definitely want some answers, but I don't know if, I guess I think we should take a little guidance as far as, because I know there are different things going on. Do we need to be careful, or can we just?
Great question, Commissioner Simmons. I would avoid talking about any of the personnel that were involved in it. What I can say publicly is that when it came to the city's attention, the personnel matters were handled regarding the utility billing error. You can certainly talk about the scope and what you want to do with the policy. I would just avoid talking about the personnel issues, because that's where we're seeing potential litigation matters.
Yep, and that's not my point to bring up personnel. I don't want to talk about that. I just kind of want to talk about the issue overall. So that's where I'm at. So I guess the question then is, when I was told about this information, I was told that it was over $1 million, it affected water and sewer, and there's a large account. And then, a little while later, I was told that it was credited back. That's about the extent of what I knew. I'm just curious if anybody knew anything more than that, or anything like that.
I knew about what you knew. That's
Okay.
I think that's a good summary of what
Okay.
I was informed of.
Okay. All right. So I'm just,
We're all informed.
Okay.
If
Well,
you're willing to ask
When
questions
it was brought
about
to
it.
my attention, the first thing out of my mouth was, advise all of the commission.
Yep. So I think that was done. However, I feel like a lot of information was lacking, and that became apparent in the May 10th article. And I guess my question with that then, and it's more of a rhetorical question, is why wasn't this information shared with the commission? So I feel like if there's an issue that is this large, I feel like the information should be shared with the commission, however that may be, so we're aware of it. I don't need to know about every $5 little error or anything like that. But if things add up like this and we're seeing, issues come to a head, I feel like I want to know about it, just so then that way if there's questions or anything like that are coming up, I can be informed. And if it's done in a public forum where we have the transparency, then we're holding ourselves accountable, right? So you'll have to let me know if I'm getting too, in the weeds here in terms of legal things, but I guess, how confident are we that all the billing errors have been found? I guess that's my question to staff. Are we 90%, 99%, 50%? Like, I know there's a lot of work done. I'm just, I know we don't know what we don't know, but how confident are we?
Well, thank you, Commissioner Anderson. I'm assuming that one's for me because you're looking right at
Well,
me.
I don't, or,
I'll start and
I don't-
certainly would let Mr. Anvik handle more of the detailed answers. And, my understanding here, and again, not being directly involved, but my understanding is that these things started being identified last year. And a lot of these smaller things, the sump pump stuff, the smaller issues were being addressed. Public Works was working with utility billing. A lot of the things were corrected. There was, of course, the big account with Cargill. But yeah, my understanding is that a lot of the corrections have been made. They were made well before some of this, even before the Cargill count became clear. My understanding in that, as the Cargill thing came forward, that was when administration started reaching out to commissioners to inform them the level of information. I was involved with some of that, but in terms of how much of that information was divulged to you, we could certainly go back and look through records. We can certainly ask the prior staff that aren't here anymore. I'm not sure they're obligated to answer at this point, but in terms of what has been corrected, a lot of those adjustments were made. The Cargill thing came up. Staff person reached out to Cargill to see if they'd be interested in a payback. They were, and so not sure that they were obligated to, being as it was an error on our part, but they certainly were willing to do at least the last 2 years worth of issues, and we were certainly appreciative of that. So, but I would certainly turn it over to Mr. Andrick as his team was very engaged in helping find some of these things and resolving them.
Yeah, I can kind of answer that. Just when we were, finding a lot of this stuff, you don't know how big it gets, right away. So when we would find the errors, we'd send that to the finance department. They'd make the corrections and send that back. The majority of the issues that we were finding were underbilling. There are very few, I mean, there was instances of some overbilling, and when we did that, we'd go back 6 months, you know, to correct that. And, you know, so as it started, we didn't take real good notes of it because you thought, you know, okay, well, we're finding some here and there. And then, you know, kind of as it progressed, it started to get more and more. And then, you know, we're keeping a little bit better track, but we still weren't tracking like every single one we had. You know, I mean, we do have some logs of all the corrections that were sent, you know, up to finance, but a lot of that, as we found it, they were being taken care of, either credited, or when it comes to underbilling, we were just making the corrections and having it, you know, go forward. You know, there's a few times where some of the sanitation places that were commercial business were getting charged residential rates. You know, we just correct that. We got a few phone calls. I mean, we didn't reach out, you know, when there weren't really big, you know, errors. We didn't reach out to any of the account holders. Some would call back, you know, and say, hey, why is my bill different this month? And, you know, it was, oh, well, what is, you know, we found an error, you were getting, you know, this rate, this is the rate you're supposed to be charged, you know, and then they'd be like, well, are you going to charge me for before? We're like, no, we're not going to. And they were okay with that. You know, they just wanted to explain that charge to them. But for the information we have.
Excuse me, who made that decision that we weren't going to recharge? I wasn't part of the conversation. I don't assume any of these.
Well, we talked with one previous finance director before.
Okay.
We had a conversation that, and then that was a city administrator decision at that time. When we were kind of going back and forth on what do we do when we're finding this, and most of them were smaller amounts when we're talking about that. When it's
So Matt, I'm sorry, let me, because, yeah, so smaller amounts are one thing, but Cargill was, from my understanding, $1.2 million.
Yeah, it was substantial.
Is that
yes.
correct?
Correct.
So, and do we have proof of that? Do you have proof that that's how much water they used, $1.2 million worth of water?
Correct.
So, the one question I think we all have is, who made the decision not to, and again, it's what's done is done, but made that decision to only accept, and I call it accept, $508,000. Why, if we have proof, why would we not go back for the whole $1.2 million? Why
That
would
I
we settle
wasn't, that, I mean, personally, I wasn't involved in that decision on that. We just brought that stuff forward. I know,
You didn't bring it forward to the commission.
no, I brought it forward to, the group that we had the meeting with, the city administrator, the finance director at the time, and they reached out, and then after that, I was just included.
So did we, so did we sign a contract with Cargill saying, they've got great attorneys, I'm sure, they're the hugest #1 agricultural business in the world, right? They got many attorneys, I'm sure that before we said, okay, we'll settle for $508,000, somebody must have had to sign something, you know, not going after them for the whole amount.
Commissioner Simmons, I'm not aware of any, I was not requested to draft any type of settlement agreement. And if there was a settlement agreement, that would have to come before.
Is there some paper? I just can't imagine Cargill not, with the attorneys they have, not wanting to make sure that they're free and clear of this. There's got to be some paperwork somewhere. If not, I don't know why we wouldn't go back.
Was anybody here involved in that conversation? I was not.
No, again.
And that, I guess, I don't know what, I guess that'd be a Shockley question on how far back we can charge. I don't know what North Dakota law is on that.
I can certainly take a look at that, and we can approach, if it's the commission's direction to go back and approach Cargill and see, we can certainly do that.
That's $500,000. I'd make that recommendation right now that we go back and look at that and try to, you know, that's a lot of money for our taxpayers that none of us even knew about it, Pierce, and that doesn't make us look good either, folks, so.
Were there other large ones, Matt?
That was the largest.
The only one that was ever referenced to me was Cargill.
Yeah, that was the largest one by far. There's some other ones that were, a few $1,000s. We had a few sprinkler accounts that had gotten turned off for a few years, and then they were charged with water for that. Part of the reason, I believe, I wasn't part of that conversation. But I believe we did go and back charge those, and those were some of the only ones that I know were, because they were normally required to tell us when they got when they're starting to use them again, and they had us shut them off, but never again called us back. So those are the ones that were that I know of that were actually back billed, and they were probably right around $10,000 each or so.
So some of those things that you've outlined in a correspondence you sent to me on, I don't know if it has a date on here. Anyway, so will you be able to report back of, you know, now that we're identified these and who's paying the bills and some of those back revenues that are owed the city?
We can look at it. That would have to be a probably
You
almost
did a great job in your
accounting.
summary.
Yeah.
Like I said, this was just last week that I received this from you, and I don't know which day it was. May 11th. And the person in your department has done nothing less than an amazing job in identifying this stuff. And, but you know, for some of these line items, I'd really like to know, and I think the commission should know, and the public should know, as to where, how those counts may be cleared up, if you will. Mr. Scott?
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis. One thing I was just talking with our city attorney here, and some of these are very detailed type questions that it's difficult to answer on the fly for one, and not being overly involved. But what we could do is go back. We could prepare a report of findings, so to speak. Bring back some more collected information. We can look into what conversations were had. I'm sure there's more information there. How did some of these errors occur? And more importantly, what are we doing to prevent them in the future? Because that should really be the focus at this point too, or one of the focuses is, what are we doing moving forward? I'll say for the sake of, the big account with Cargill, unlike what the article says, the error was more of a data entry thing. It talked about a faulty meter, but it wasn't really a faulty meter. But we are putting checks and balances in to avoid some of those things in the future, and those are in place right now. But point being is that we can prepare a more detailed report, bring it back for the commission and certainly for the public to somewhat answer some of this and then address how we are moving forward to prevent this in the future.
I just asked Commissioner Simmons and Commissioner Olson, this email that Matt sent to me, because I had forwarded some questions to him, is quite detailed and very informative. And if you don't have that, commissioners, I need to get that to you, or Matt needs to send that out.
Justin, did you
This is,
send that last week to the, or no?
And like I said, I received this on May 11th, and I'll share it down the line here.
Okay.
Again, to Public Works and the work that they've done on this to identify some of them and to give some clarity as to how broad the errors were is embarrassing at the very least to anybody and everybody involved, not to mention the financial element that's in here. I think you'll agree with me when you read it.
Yeah, this is very informative. So-
Commissioner Olson?
We weren't looking for these, though. We found this due to a study, though, right?
Yes, we had originally.
Not to poke anything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We
story.
find things because of a study.
Right. It was originally, we were working on our routing software with Rubicon, where we had to get, accurate counts of where dumpsters were, how many times we're picking up and everything, and that was piggyback on what the sanitation study was bringing forward. So a lot of the information we were gathering was to get prepared for that study so we, if we're going to base any kind of rates off that, we wanted to make sure that we had the most accurate information. Once we started kind of looking at that, we were noticing more and more accounts that had errors here and there. And then we just started working with finance on that. Through most of this project, I was kind of reporting to the city administrator on this, kind of going through the chain of command as the finance director. would report to the city administrator. So I was mainly communicating between the two of them. Dustin and I were having conversations here and there, and really he didn't get brought into it until later in the year when we kind of ran into some of those bigger accounts.
You bring up a great point, Commissioner Olson. This was a sanitation study. And what one of Matt's staff people found is that there were billing errors in sanitation to the tune of $11,000 a month. For a period of a year is $132,000 is what it came up with. Once she completed that, and this is a credit to Mr. Anvik, he said, continue. So the study was designed for the sanitation. This employee was extraordinary at what she did, and she found that. And then to credit Mr. Anvik, says, continue on and look at the other departments. Otherwise, we would have probably been in the dark to this day. So, good job to you. Good job to the young lady. Please, Commissioner
Thank you.
Simmons.
I think Dustin was right here, not necessarily to go backwards and find blame. I mean, that is not going to help any of us. I think it's more to move forward and have checks and balances to make sure that we have all the safeguards in place. I think that's what's important, moving forward in every single area that we're dealing with now. And it would be nice, though, to get some, the mayor has we didn't get that, his memo. So I think if you just forward that on, it looked like that was quite a bit of good information in there that I've never seen before. I don't think any of us have, so that'd be good.
Please, Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, so I think part of what was in your email, because I think Dustin, you forwarded us the open records request from Ms. Royer, and in that record is an email that has that summary. It was dated February 2nd. So it took 3 months and 8 days to get to us, but it eventually got to us. And so my point with that is I'd like to make sure that things are brought forward in a more timely manner. And I don't want to go back and do blame or anything like that, but moving forward, you addressed one of my questions as far as what's being done to prevent this, from happening again. One last question I had is concerning those accounts that were overbilled, and I know there weren't many of them, and it wasn't for a lot, but have they been credited back, or is there a plan to credit them back?
My understanding, they were, as soon as we found those errors, they were credited back at that time.
And the report I got back was that there were 0 residential users that were overbilled. It was commercial. Is that correct, Mr. Anvik?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes.
The majority, if there was any residential, there were, I know, less than 100. I mean, it was not very many at all. The most residential ones that were affected were not being charged for sewer or vector control, forestry, different things like that we found. One thing, I guess, as the point of what we've put in place to move forward where some of this doesn't happen, as of last Friday, our water department crews put a new meter in the meter pit that's out at Cargill for their main meter. We worked with them to be able to do that on a shutdown because they couldn't shut down their water for a long time. So they had a shutdown last week. We were able to put a brand new water meter in there, so that is now on our AMI system. So we will have a more accurate reading. We can have basically hourly readings now if we wanted them, and we'll be able to track it a lot better than we were. I know Dustin had mentioned it before, and it wasn't a faulty meter that we got because Cargill was sending us readings every month. They were just somehow not matching up or getting checked. So it was more of the multiplier part of it that was in there, in the billing software, I guess.
Okay.
Commissioner Olson.
So we've all were briefed on this a while back about this overbilling or underbilling, this situation. I feel as an elected official, it's on us to ask more questions at that time and dig into it then, rather than if we're now saying, oh, we should have been told about this, then it's our responsibility to be the fact finders and dig into it then, rather than wait and wait and wait. And now it gets to this point that and I wasn't briefed on all of this either. I knew of it, I myself, and that, but rather than to, you know, let it fester there, we should have, it was on us too, not to ask those important questions back then, is how I feel too.
The way it was presented initially to me was Cargill. That's what I was told, that we had a billing error with Cargill. I asked how much, how many years back. You're right.
But I'm not trying
You're
to
right.
defend
You're right.
anybody, you know, I'm just saying that we as elected officials, we have to take on that responsibility too, to ask the hard questions when we know, when we're informed of things like this.
I think moving forward, I don't believe we're going to have that big a concern, Dustin, anymore. You've reassured me that you will be communicating with all of us on a regular basis, and we will know. I'm pretty confident, for now at least, that you'll do that. Am I correct in assuming that and saying that?
Well, I will certainly do my best to keep you as informed as I possibly can, yes.
The scope of the size of our city, the departments and everything, we have to continue to have a complete overhaul with finance and reporting. And obviously, we're on the right path for that. Something that Dustin will share with you in a minute. But this is so widespread, it doesn't make any difference if it was sewer hookups. It doesn't make any difference if it was garbage. It doesn't make any difference if it was even the sump pumps, which is a fee for everybody that built from 2020, something like that, have not been charged. I mean, this is beyond comprehension of how this mess, until we've got to this point. If the public was to sit down and sit side by side with this, the only thing they'd want to do is backhand one of us. This is so deep and for so long that whenever there was from previous commissions as well, actions taken by the commission and nothing was ever done with it. It wasn't executed. And this is not something a commissioner is going to go in and look for these line items, but we sure as hell been dealt a hand now, and it's going to be up to us to try and fix it. And that's going to be policies and procedures. And there's probably some people that aren't going to like them. You can't read this second page and not be embarrassed. I can't be. So, again, to Matt Anbick and to your staff people, thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Anderson, you got any more?
I'm good.
This item? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Item number 14 is the City Administrator's Report. Dustin Scott, Assistant City Administrator, with regard to the Finance Director hiring update and a July 3rd meeting. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Commissioners. Well, it's a good segue. And I'm very pleased to be able to bring forward the great news that our hiring committee for the Finance Director conducted interviews last week. They unanimously voted to make a recommendation to the City Administrator to extend an offer to Miss Heidi DeLorme. Heidi is going to be an excellent fit to lead this department. She has an extensive background, a diverse background, not only as an employee, but also has served on boards, so understands at least a little bit of what it is like to be on your side of the table as well. She is currently working with United Way and has indicated a tentative start date of June 19th. So again, we are absolutely pleased that things have worked out and she can start as soon as she is. With that, I would answer any questions on the Finance Director position.
The commissioners on that hiring committee were Commissioner Anderson and myself. So if you have any questions, be happy to try and respond to you. Okay.
Thank you. My next item here is just to discuss the July 3rd City Commission meeting. Of course, that's the day before July 4th, so I'm not sure not only if you want to reschedule, but to which date you would want to reschedule. Or do you want to just have the meeting on the 3rd? That's where I just put that in your court. And you let us know what you want to do.
Well, do you have any anticipation of what would be on that agenda that we would normally do or discuss?
There are some big projects out there. I know for example, the development project over by the lights where we just received proposals for. I would anticipate that would come before the commission in June. There's also a preliminary budget review that I would think would probably be the mid to later part of July, given where we're at today. But other than that, no, I can't anticipate.
So could we have it the week before or the week after? You almost want it on a Monday. Where are we at? July.
So that'd be the 26th.
Yeah, we don't have a third one anymore. We could have it on the 26th. That would be a normal, back to an old, right, correct? Third meeting on the 26th of June?
Or you could go the 10th, then the 24th, and then the 31st.
Correct, whichever.
There's
right,
5 Mondays in July.
in July, so.
I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
I have no idea what my schedule will be, so
I know
whatever
that,
you guys want to do.
we all know that the 3rd isn't an option, or the 4th.
Or we just skip the 3rd, we have it all done on the 10th and the 24th. It'd be the 2nd and the 4th versus the 1st and the 3rd. And then we'd be on the same schedule then for August. That would be my suggestion. Hold it on the 10th and then the 24th.
But then we'd have to change 2 dates. Do we normally have it on the?
We would normally have it on the 3rd and the 17th. We'd have to
Okay,
change 2
we'd
meetings.
have to change 2 dates though. but-
John, can we do that? As long as we notify the public and the normal requirements?
Okay, I like
Okay.
that idea. Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter
that,
with
that
you.
sounds good. Keeps it at every other.
Makes sense to
so,
me.
Yeah.
That way, I like
Dustin,
that
you
idea.
send out a memo to that effect, please, or Emily?
Will do.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Any questions for Mr. Scott?
I just have a comment for him. Dustin, I know that the last few months have been tough on you and the staff, but I want to commend you and the staff, but you for really hanging in there and pulling all of our people together. It shows a lot of what you're doing, so I appreciate that very much.
I'd like to echo that. Having worked with Mr. Scott under these trying circumstances has been he stepped up. We're very grateful for that. Dustin, nice job.
Staff is from bottom up, top down, everyone has come together and we're just, trying to do what we can every day and make sure that residents don't see an impact to the services that they've expected.
I want you to know also, Mr. Scott and I met with Nexus and their lead supervisor that's handling the city of West Fargo and working with our staff and finance. And he had good things to say. He said that they're doing a good job for the specific roles that they're fulfilling right now. And of course, his staff is filling a number of other key areas, and they've divided up payables and receivables and utility billing and those types of things. So just so you know, I have had a conversation with Nexus and wanted to try and identify if there's any shortcomings, anything that we're dealing with right now that we're falling short of, and Ryan assured me that we were not. And again, Mr. Scott was a part of that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Is there any correspondence anybody like to share? I got one thing, and I think, is Pierre still here, or did he just leave? I want to commend Mr. Anvik in Public Works and Chad in Urban Forestry. Last Friday, Commissioner Anderson and I participated in the Arbor Day celebration, which we received again 2 statewide awards for a Growth City USA and a Tree City USA. And I can't tell you how many years we've gotten both of those, but it's substantial. And if you're driving the streets today, you'll see that there's a lot more trees being planted on South Cheyenne Street over the last several days and on a number of other areas in our community. So they do that on a relatively small budget and do a great job. So that Arbor Day celebration was great. And we also honored the Ostroms, have retired from Ostrom's Hardware Store. And they were the honorees of the Arbor Day celebration. And there, we will be planting a silver maple in Elmwood Park. That's one of the areas that one of their children used to do a lot of ice skating and at the skating rink there, and that's where they would like to have the tree planted. So looking forward to that day when we have that. Also today, we had a great event at noon today honoring fallen police officers. Today, this week is National Police Officers and in recognition of that. And I was extremely proud. Vern Beardson, our chaplain for our department, gave all the blessings and the prayers there. And then the featured keynote speaker for the event was our own Chief Ordinance, and did a great job of outlining some of the trials that police officers go through in society today. So it was extremely proud. We must have had 25 or plus officers in attendance, and it was a great event, very moving event. That's all I have, Commissioners. I do have one other thing that I put in your boxes. It's regarding a ribbon cutting that's going to take place in a business, Red River Marksman. And I got that invitation, has been placed in your box prior to this meeting. That's all the correspondence I have. Commissioners, do you have any non-agenda items you'd like to visit about this evening? Does any of our staff, department heads have anything that you'd like to bring forward this evening? Or that? Commissioner Simmons?
Move to adjourn?
Commissioner Olson?
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.